Welcome to another week of Radio Melee. We've got a very special European guest from the UK, the U of K. You know him, you love him. One of the best Falcos to do it in the modern era. It's Frenzy. What's up, dude?
Yeah, how's it going, Toph, PP? So good to be on this call. Honestly, I watched the first few, and I don't know, I've been following you guys forever, so it's nice to finally have a
Oh wow,
discussion
we
with you
really
two.
we really appreciate that. Most people,
Yeah.
most of our guests who come on have never seen an episode,
Mhm.
right, PP?
That's right.
Most of
They
them don't know
come
what the
on
fuck
and
is going
they're
on.
like, "What are we doing here? What am I signed up for?" And
Yep.
we have to go through the whole
Which is
thing, but it
which
was
is
nice.
fine. I mean, we're just a humble, in this humble corner of the internet. We're just doing the best we can. It's always nice to get a familiar face.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, so I do want to before we get into things. We got a couple call-ins. We're going to be responding, this week. Of course, the way this program works is that people are going to call in and ask us whatever you want. And we're going to talk about whatever it is you want us to talk about. And we realized in the spirit of, hitting some audiences that maybe we don't normally get just because we realize that time zones are a factor. People have work or in Europe, it can be getting pretty late. Um, and so we've got a voicemail line now for those of you who weren't aware. I'll just plug it right at the beginning of the episode. The voicemail line, we've got a phone number for it that our producer is going to put on the screen in the bottom right corner, 213-347-5242. You can call in, ask us whatever you want, and we'll talk about it live on air. So we are going to get, I think, yeah, we got a couple callers. We're not going to do all the call-in questions we got because it's such high demand, but we're going to address one of the juicier ones that we got. So
Mhm.
do be sure
And
to ring the
for
line.
sure, absolutely. And if you want a question for a specific guest, right? Maybe you're wanting, okay, maybe I don't want a general question, but you want to ask something for a specific guest, which we would love. Absolutely. Be sure to follow GG Melee on Twitter. They are going to be talking about who our guests are usually the day before. We are staying on the ball so far about getting our guests in advance, and hopefully we continue that. We'll see how it goes. After Big House, everyone flying back, but we're gonna try, darn it. And look there so you can have an idea of who it is and leave a question for that, or you can guess and leave a question for a random person. Maybe we'll get them eventually. You never know.
That's right. Yeah, we got we're trying to lock our guests in at least over the weekend so that you've got a day or two to, say you call in on Monday, you're going to know who the guest is and you can give a specific question. Otherwise, if you're one of our YouTube listeners or whatever, Tuesdays 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this live, and we always take questions live with !Radio Mail in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what do you I don't know. What do you got going on for for the foreseeable future, Frenzy? Are you traveling into the upcoming kind of majors or anything like that?
Yeah,
The big house
so
is this coming weekend.
yeah, obviously it's a bit late for Big House for me. But
Right.
yeah, no, I'm going to Santa Paws 2 in December.
Mm.
Oh yeah. Where's
Yeah,
that?
it's in Alabama.
Oh,
So that's my
Interesting.
first time there.
Yeah, I've never
And
been to Alabama.
yeah, and yeah, I know there's quite a few people going. The tiers have been reaching out to a lot of people to try and make the event the best it can be. I know there's a charity aspect to it as well, something to do with
um,
I think it's like animal welfare or something like that.
awesome.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's for a good cause as well. Um, but yeah, outside of that, I've just got a few European stuff coming up. Archimele, it's next month. I think that has some
I've
American
heard some
guests
good
coming
stuff.
over.
Heard some good stuff about that
Yeah.
one too.
I want to say Aklo, Foxy. Um, there was a few others that are escaping my mind right now, but I think it'll be the biggest. Well, after Fate, it'll be the biggest of European event
Hmm.
of the year. So yeah, really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I think there's a timeliness to having you on the show and these events coming up as well. I mean, it'd be cool to see you make some cool upsets at those events also, but even outside of that, um there's a big change that happened in the UK recently. I'm sure that you might be sick of talking about it. I have no idea, but my understanding is there was the big changing of the guard recently. You took number one from Professor Pro after
Yeah.
he had been number one on the UK PR for 10 years, a literal decade.
Yeah.
And he kind of passed the torch recently in the most recent event, or one of the most recent events you guys were at. And I was wondering, what that must feel like for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people know, a lot of people originally knew Prof from like the Forbidden Game, right? Don't know how much I'm allowed to say about that on here, but yeah, and he's been doing Melee for a long, long time. Has been basically the face of UK Melee for like you said, the past decade, if not longer. One of the first people that springs to mind when you think of Europe, I'd say.
Mhm.
A lot of the people I think from the doc era as well. He used to be one of the most technical foxes, right? I'm sure Toph can
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of attest to that. I mean, I think one of the reasons he played Green Fox was because of Silent Wolf.
Mm.
Mhm.
So he's
Mhm.
definitely in that Green Fox technical sort of like archetype that we've got going on.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, it feels weird. I mean, he's the guy that I always travel to events with. To America, we've had loads of good trips over the years. And yeah, he sort of just not handed it over to me. It's not like he just quit and gave it to me. Like I tried really, really hard to beat
Right,
him, and I
right,
finally did it.
right.
Right,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he it took me like 10 years. I started with the doc. He was the number one, and until July this year, he was still the number one. So
The whole time,
um,
basically, right?
the whole time, yeah. And it wasn't for about 8 years until he actually lost a tournament in the UK to a
Oh,
UK pro.
wow.
So
Who did he lose to, out of curiosity? Was
me.
it you? Okay.
Yeah. So I
Well,
mean, I know people.
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I know people talk about like Fiction's Vertigo streak or that
Right.
sort of thing. But I think Prof's streak of dominance in UK is one of the most like underrated, underlooked
Mm.
Yeah,
sort of
that
stats.
sounds like a really long period of time. I'm curious if anyone's compiled kind of a list of the longest streaks of one locals for particular regions, because that actually is a pretty
Yeah.
interesting one. I mean,
Mhm.
for Prof, well, I mean, the UK's got some other obviously really strong players, right? There's
Yeah,
like
we've had a
V.
lot of yeah, like I think Sechi's probably the main person that comes to mind
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's a Guilty Gear player now, but
Doing quite
we
well,
lost that
right? He
one.
was he was
Yeah, yeah.
in top 8 at
At
Evo this
Evo,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he was top 100. I think he was ranked 40, around the 40s in 2019. Obviously, Prof, Vanity Angel was top 100 at one point. Fuzziness, the speedrunner, he was top 100. He was the best in the UK for a while as well. And then in terms of new players, we've got Kingu and Max and Fatino. All of those guys have been to I think they went to Gommel last year, and then a few of them have been to some different American events.
Hmm.
So yeah, we've definitely got a good foundation. And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for the future. It's not like I've got this death hold over the UK. Like I'm fighting for my life out here to keep this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's a really
I saw
exciting
your
time.
tweet. I saw your tweet, like, "How
Yeah,
did
yeah,
Prof do this for 10 years?" I saw your tweet. You're 'cause, like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you're saying it's really competitive right now. In the time in which Prof changes, it seems like there. I mean, again, I'm sure he was battling pretty hard. I know that especially in the past year or so, I think he had a lot of hard fought sets too. So it's my understanding that the UK is becoming really competitive, like a lot of other places here too.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of people that started either just before COVID or like a little bit before, sort of like the Zoomer Slippy Kid age. And yeah, they're getting to the point where I think they must have taken up about half of our PR now or something like that.
Mm.
Like I look at our power ranking that just came out, and about half the names on it were people that if I was at an event in 2018, I would have never heard of them.
Yeah.
So it really is quite a big shift, and I think we're seeing a lot of people improve very, very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if in the top 100 next couple of years, it's people that have been playing since like Slippy.
Yeah.
Right.
With
I don't
COVID.
know if you guys agree with that, but that's
It,
how I
it feels
sort
like
of
it's like
outlook it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely feels like that in a lot of places. Certainly, yeah, certainly my region. I mean, I think it's the same way. I think this is probably a pretty, yeah, like a phenomenon that I think we're seeing pretty much everywhere. Who would you say is like, who, if you're number one right now, who's kind of in the conversation right behind you?
Um, it's going to be divisive for all of the UK viewers that are
Oh
watching.
boy,
I mean, you
But,
could,
they're
I
gonna
mean,
have
you
a
could
hard
just name,
time after this
you could just
episode.
name all of them. You don't have to name them in order.
okay.
I mean,
Well, I'll say this. I think that at the moment the number 3, so it goes like me, Prof, then Max at the moment. I think he's the best right now. But
Max.
Max, yeah, so Sheik player. But Fatino is the person that gives me the hardest time personally. So another Falco
Okay.
player. But he doesn't travel very much. And then Kingu, I think, is the person that people probably know the best outside of the UK. I'd say he's probably the weakest right now, but he's got the most motivation. And I think he's got the greatest potential right now. Yeah, so there's a bit of a dynamic there. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's, I mean, that's kind of like what I sort of expected it would be. But yeah, yeah, it's cool to see because it definitely feels like, yeah, especially like you said with Kingu, like, and I also kind of had the same impression with I don't know, yeah, like Fatino, like it feels like they're, y'all seem to attend, for example, Gommel every year. I know
Yeah.
Max has been to both this Gommel and last year, and
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, it's always cool to see the UK crew come out because it seems like there's a lot of kind of motivation to get better right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think one thing that always comes up, and I mean, I'm guessing we might end up talking about this partly, is just like with the conversation with like Europe, and obviously there's a Leopard tweet every 2 months, and but yeah, it's always like, oh, we don't have that many players, right? But I mean, it's like they're at that level, but it's just because there's a smaller population of people playing Melee, right? And I think people sort of forget that if you look at it proportionally, like we probably have the same amount of talent as like a similar sized state in America or something like that. If you have like a a decent comparison to the two.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, obviously it's a lot of commitment for people to come over to like all these events, right? Especially
right.
if you're not already established, like to get on the board and to get recognized, you have to put something in. You have to sort of like take that hit and just sort of
Right.
go for like 10,000s of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever currency
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get over there, right? So I mean, I think that's one of the barriers, but I wouldn't say that the skill level is as different as it's sort of made out to be. And I think anytime there is a big European event that some of the guys from NA come over to, I think there's always some random upset or like
Right.
result that you wouldn't expect, just because there's
Yeah.
not the opportunity sometimes, right?
Right.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does seem that way. I mean, I would imagine that if we talk to I don't know, like I don't know that we've had, for example, like Josh Mann or someone on the show, but I can imagine him saying kind of a similar thing with regards to like, some of the, like, for example, the Australian scene, who obviously also
Yeah.
have to travel really far. And it's cool that we're, it feels like coming out of COVID, it feels like we're getting more and more of that kind of like international presence. It feels like for a while it was kind of the same people over and over. Obviously nothing wrong with that. But it's cool to get these fresh faces that have that motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I this is my yet again attempt at a segue because we're thinking about fresh faces, and there's a particular, I wanted to bring you on for talking about UK and Europe, but I also wanted to bring you on and talk about Falco, a character whose face we don't always see in top 8. Oh, he's
No.
trying, look at him. And this is a character that I've seen a lot of doom posting about in the last several months. I imagine you might have seen it too.
Yeah.
But I think, among a lot of like, the fictions or magis of the world, I think there's probably some optimism still. So I'm wondering what you think about this disconnect, how you feel about the state of Falco right now in your view.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty loaded question. I mean, so I mean, obviously, I started when it was like the Falco era, right? So it was UPP, it was Mango doing really well, and then Westball's doing well for a couple of years, and then it's sort of gone through this dip between sort of like 2017 through to about maybe COVID era, I'd say. And then I'd say COVID era from there was when I think Ginger started getting really good, playing in like Slippy Champions League and all of that stuff. There's like the Magi Mango set at Genesis, Fiction switching to Falco. There was lots of all these different events. Bobby getting really good. So I think it just goes up and down, and there's a lot of people that are really, really, really close. And I mean, I actually took a look at the top 50 and the top 100, the past two ones,
Mm.
and I'd say there's more representation of Falco on there than ever before. I'm not
Wow.
100% sure on the stats, but that was my just like vibe from
But it's
looking
up
at it.
there.
Hmm.
Sorry, one sec.
Okay.
I think there was about six Falcos in the top 50 at the
Mhm.
moment, like mains.
Yeah.
And then I think there was about 11 on the top 100 last time. So what I think it is, it is just the. Sorry, my throat is dying. Give me
Yeah.
a second.
Do what you
It'll
gotta
happen.
do, gamer. Yeah, Frenzy getting
Stay
very
hydrated.
passionate about the bird here. He has
I am.
to really make sure he's speaking clearly.
Yeah. So what I think it is that it's just there's not a lot in top 8, but there's a hell of a lot in top 32 and top 64, right? And I think, it sort of skews it because, the majority of people only watch top 8,
Right.
I'd say. Like, that's when the most viewership is. So, unless there's like a Mango Falco day or there's a crazy run from, your Ginger Fiction Magi,
Yeah.
there's not really going to be any of that. But I do think it's probably like one of the best times to break into top 8 for Falco, just in terms of like the matchup spread we have at the moment. Like, there's no Armada wall that there used to be.
That does help.
I'd say like Hungry Box seems a bit shakier now versus other characters. There's a lot more sets recently these drops, and I know he's had multiple close sets with like Ginger, Magi. There's a lot of Falcons now. There was 3 Falcons in the top 10 for a very long time. There's like a million Foxes, like there always is. So I think it's really about like just tightening up a lot of those non like I think a lot of the Falcons at the moment are very good versus Fox at that level, but
Yeah.
not versus like the Moths, the Sheiks, the Puffs, at that top 10 level. And that's what you need to break into top 8, right? Is you need to compete in all of your matchups at a top 10 level. And I just think we're not there yet in terms of some of those matchups. And I mean, people are trying. Don't get me wrong; it's just really hard, And there's people, collaborating and trying to talk about stuff. But he's just a very punishing character in tournament, and especially in some of those other matchups. Like Moth, Sheik, Peach Puff. You mess up one small thing, and you don't have as much of that punish game, like comeback plan, right, as you do with like Fox, Falcon, etc. So yeah, I have a lot more thoughts, but I mean, I'd like to hear what you think, PP and Toph.
Yeah, no, I mean, I when people ask me this, I always, say something similar. I think, if the character's fine, it's just that the players need to get there. It's a similar thing to what you're saying, right? And
Yeah.
so when people say, "Why don't I see him in top 8?" It's just the people haven't gotten there yet. Like same with Sheik. Like everyone said, "Oh, Sheik can't do it. We don't see her in top 8 much as a solo." And then Jmook won Genesis, and then
Yeah.
he's he's been doing a lot of amazing things. So it's the
Mhm.
same kind of deal in my view. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any different thoughts.
it's funny because Falco for a long time was just kind of not that type of character, at least in terms of how we would see him perform. Like you said, there was Mango and PP at the top, and then it felt like there was kind of a vacuum in like the lower top 100 region where it was kind of maybe not the lower top 100 region, but let's say like around like the top 50 area.
Yeah.
There weren't that for some reason there just weren't that many. It was like it felt like I don't know. It is interesting now that you pointed out that we've kind of had a bit of a role reversal when it comes to now we've got as many Falcons as we've ever had in the top 50 in general, but just not at like top 8 tournaments and that's just kind of because Mango's realistically speaking, like for most of the 2010s and the early 2020s, like if there was a Falco in top 8, it was probably Mango. So
Yeah.
no, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, there's this kind of I think often held sentiment that like Falco's a character. He's pretty like easy to succeed with at a low level when people kind of, can't deal with lasers, don't have good movement, run into stuff, they get tricked by all the short hop auto cancel bears and stuff like that. And then at the once you start figuring stuff out, and people start getting better, he kind of the higher up you go, like I feel like there's this sentiment that Falco becomes kind of increasingly difficult to succeed with against like top players.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious what actually both of you, I mean, obviously since both of you either main or mained Falco, kind of curious what each of you think about that. But I feel like I hear this kind of sentiment a lot. And I will also say that anecdotally to me, I feel like whenever I hop on unranked, if I play a Falco player, just like an average skill level, like, Falco player that's like pretty good, if they're losing pretty bad with Falco, they very often, like 80% of the time, will switch to Fox.
Yeah.
I just feel like I see this from like a lot of players that are in that kind of mid-level, area. So yeah, I'm kind of curious what you both think about this. And maybe this perception is changing. I have no idea.
Yeah. Do you want me to go first?
Oh, please, Frenzy.
Yeah.
Guest of honor.
So, I mean, one theory I've had on it's linked to this thing is that I guess the two and now sort of three people that have done the best with Falco at the top level have been UPP, Mango, and I'd say probably Fiction in recent times, right? I'd say he's had the most top 8s and like big wins. Maybe there's an argument for Ginger sometimes there as well, but I feel like at least the most recent era before Fiction's doing whatever he's doing now was him. And I feel like the thing that all three of you have in common is that you've played other characters at a very high level as well. Whereas I think all of these people coming up, myself, Ginger, Magi, Bobby, as far as I'm aware, we've all always played Falco. And so
I came up as a Falco only in tournament player. I didn't play my Marth until after I established with Falco.
Okay, fair enough.
It's fair. It's a fair enough point. Don't let me stop you.
No, but I mean, all I was going to say is that I've started past couple of months messing around with other characters a lot more, and I have really felt my gameplay perspective sort of broaden.
Yes.
So I honestly, and I'm not really planning to use anything for tournament or anything like that, but I think that would be a big help to a lot of the sort of Falco bird population would just be to like mess around with other characters more and sort of get their perspective. Because I think a lot of the issues I see, and I coach a lot of people for Falco and for other characters a little bit, but it's always like they have like amazing laser game or like all the combos and stuff are super good, but it's more of the like standard like melee concepts that are sort of lacking a bit.
Yep. No, I
being
totally
patient and being patient and like reacting properly and I mean Falco's like he's such a good character in some spots that you feel like you can do anything and you can sort of like throw yourself at them, and then when you play another character you're like, wow, I really can't do anything here. It's like the risk reward isn't there. And so that's just sort of one of my theories with it, but I would say that opinion's changing, like you said, Toph. I think it's moved up from like the mid level to I'd say like the low top 100 level, so like the 70s 80s. Like I said, that's where there's the most. I think there's a group of the top 100 where there's like 4 Falcos in a row or something like that. So I think every character has that, but Falco really suffers with it near the top level. Because I think you need to branch out to break that barrier personally.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Falco is for what it's worth that kind of. I mean, for the first year or two of when I played Melee, started playing competitively, I actually played Falco before I switched to first dual maining and then eventually Fox. But I definitely kind of always, it was funny. Like I do remember. Obviously, this was at a much lower level than we're talking about people who are pretty high level, like like you said, people like Magi, Bobby, like these solo mains. But I mean, I do remember like feeling like there's like this whole aspect because like when you play Falco, there's like certain things if you've never really played another character, there are certain things you don't have to worry about as much as a lot of other characters. Like, for example, crouch canceling. I'm like, why is everyone complaining about crouch canceling? I laser it or I downer it. It's like it doesn't exist. Or like, and then I'm like, everyone's doing like dash dance grab, and I'm like, I don't know about dash dance grab. That's weird.
Yeah.
I don't like that. It's not in my wheelhouse. I'm gonna ignore that. But yeah, I mean, I watched all the Laptops videos and I got really into like shooting all these kind of lasers and stuff. So no, it's a good point.
Yeah.
And PB, it sounded like you agreed.
Yeah,
with
I mean,
Frenzy.
I kind of feel like laser is a little bit of a neutral skip for Falcos that don't, especially early on, it can be a real trap for players. And so, I mean, especially early on, I think people, because there wasn't as much crazy tech and everything, there was a lot of emphasis on playing other characters, on being a little more intelligent and approaching the game that way. And so I was encouraged, early on to play other characters, and I think that really rounded me out in a lot of ways. So I didn't have the desire to overcome all problems with short hop laser, because I think the question I get asked more than any other, I get a Falco player in my coaching, and they go, "What did I do if the fox is on the side platform?" And to me, this question is really, well, I can't solve this problem is not solvable with short hop laser, and therefore it is basically unsolvable. And so, if you're if you're playing other characters, like, you recognize like, oh, other angles, or how can I use my moves, or these things, because you're used to playing these positional games. But Falco is so used to thinking in terms of laser, and so I think having that rounded out is really helpful. And I think this is something sinister that can go, even farther up the chain. And so I think you know there are certain skills with Falco that are really helpful to succeed with. Like, he can get arthritis sometimes, right? So being able to get those edge guards down is really helpful. Or
Yeah.
he doesn't get guaranteed stuff off grab. So like being really refined with his shield pressure is really helpful. So these are things that push him a little bit farther in some ways, that you really have to have ground out, right? This is why he has more trouble with floaties, for example, right? He doesn't have up throw up air. He
Yeah.
doesn't have something like that. He can still find ways to get kills, but sometimes it's like, laser and hope they don't angle their shield down and down tilt. There's one thing that some Falcos do, right? And so there are different things that become more of an issue as laser becomes, easier for the opponent to deal with as you get stronger. So that's something else that I think Falcos are really doing a lot of effort on solving, and they're creating a lot of new problems with his other tools for other characters. And so I think that's why people are starting to break through more and more.
Yeah, that's I like that take on it. And you feel like people you were playing during your career, your competitive career, you were playing other characters
Yes.
pretty early on, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I
Which I
wanted to
don't
be
think
a
is
Marth main.
people didn't know that about you, I think. I think you didn't really publish. I mean, did you talk about that much?
I don't. I mean, if you went to North Carolina locals, you would see it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, like, you wouldn't know, right? Like, it's not something I talked about often, and I stuck to my Smashboards Falco thread, which I've seen Frenzy in, by the way.
Yeah.
It was
I
good.
remember.
We had some good conversations on
Yeah.
there. But yeah, I did play some others, and in particular, it's funny you bring up the Fox thing, Toph, because early on people would always say, "Oh, you need to practice your Falco or your Fox to warm up your Falco." Or whatever. Like, you need to play one because it'll keep you fast, or it'll keep you warm, or it's just good to have one or the other because they're so similar, right? I guess is how we talked about it back then. So if you played one, you were basically required to play the other back then. So I was at least guaranteed to do that. It's like, well, if I'm playing Fox, I might as well play some others, and one thing leads to another, and get some other characters in there.
Yeah. There's I remember there's some pretty good thread on the Falco thread where you are talking about like the different aspects that you've sort of taken from each character and put into your Falco gameplay. You'd have to troll through thousands of posts on Smashboards because that's sort of how it is. But
Or hope the search function gets you there.
Yeah. So for the 5 people that like doing that in the thread, and I know you're out there, you Falcon nerds that want to look at that. Yeah, go for it. There's a lot of good nuggets in there of wisdom. So
yeah, good shout out.
Yeah,
Love that.
We should probably start getting into the callers
Yeah.
pretty soon. One more thought I had though, real quick, was yeah, I also wonder, Did you ever make observations about, while we're on this topic, just because I think it's pretty fascinating, like, did you make observations about Mango when he was, because, yeah, when I first started watching Mango, who's a Puffman, right? So
His Falco was
this is something people
not
talked
like it
about.
is now. His
Yeah,
Falco was
but
not like it
weren't
is now
weren't
in
there?
this
I
game.
mean, there were things that he did then and still does now. But what would you say the big differences are?
Like now, today?
Obviously, it's a lot faster these days.
Yeah, so the difference is Mango's Falco now between others. Is that what you're asking? Just so I can understand.
First of all, Mango's Falco, and I was thinking the difference between Mango's Falco and others back then, but I'm also kind of
Oh,
interested in talking about how you think his Falco has changed over the years.
back then, dude, Mango's Falco was so funny. It wasn't super technical. It full hopped a lot. It wasn't. Oh well, maybe I won't make that comparison. I don't want to get in trouble. But it was actually funny. There was a brawl player in my state that really liked Mango's Falco because he said, this guy, I like watching him when he plays Falco because he doesn't combo and kill. He just wins neutral over and over, and it's very satisfying to me as a brawl player, which is obviously not how Mango is now, right? He's a
Yeah.
combo machine now. He's a combo monster now. But
Mhm.
back then, there were a lot more full hops. There was a lot more like, oh, let me like just get into a position, and then Mango was the person that basically really popularized and really, I mean, maybe found out about. I'm not sure, but the auto cancel back air, and he had like these interesting like
Yeah.
off timing shield pressure mix ups, and because usually Falco is like faster, faster, faster. Mango is like, well, we could be fast, but like let's maybe take our time, get in a position, maybe do a little bit wonkier shield pressure. Let's drift back with our nair, bait the grab and forward smash. Like let's do some of that stuff, right? And I know I know he wasn't the first to do that either, but he's someone that was able to take that concept farther and he still uses that today, even.
I mean, that
So
was the big thing to me. Was like back then, it was like, man, why does Mewtwo King have such a hard time with this guy? And you would watch Mewtwo King versus Mango, and Mango would just drift back nair, and Mewtwo King would shield grab it. It was like 5 times a set. It was like, this just works. Keeps trying to shield grab it. It's
Yeah.
because it's like it looks like you could shield grab it because it's slow, and
yeah,
then
and he was
you get
changing
force
how he
smash.
did it too. Like
He was
sometimes
changing
he
how he
would
did it.
just
Yeah,
do it in front, and so he was very conscious of that because with his Puff, he had very dynamic and mixed up shield pressure because you had to as Puff.
you
Right?
had to. What are you gonna do? You're not gonna shine. You don't have a shine. Yeah.
Right. So he wasn't tech skill monstering on people's shields. He found his own way in doing that, and he really changed the way people thought about shield pressure. So really
Yeah.
interesting player. And having that Puff background, I think still helps him in some ways today. Really, really cool
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely something to be said for like experiencing melee through, at least through the lens of different characters. Not I do think some beginner players take it a little bit too far where they branch out a little bit too early and it feels like they haven't even really found who their soul character is yet.
Mm.
But yeah, there's a balance to strike there for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, okay, well let's get into some of the callers. But before we do that, we do have real quick the community voice from our guest last week.
Yeah,
And
Khalid
of
was
course,
calling in, and he was saying, what are the factors outside the game that have the most impact for you, the dear viewer, on your melee performance?" So I'm really curious what people
yeah,
said. And apparently a lot of answers were made here, and we have our most upvoted one here from Alice Cronoa.
Alice Corona.
Corona. So,
Corona.
well,
Something
it's
like that.
close enough. Alice, please correct us in the comments on this next one. But Alice says, I think I really cannot concentrate on playing when I feel I'm not pretty or well dressed at the moment.
Oh.
Having this confidence on myself when I know I'm looking good really makes it more easy to concentrate on what's happening on the screen. Don't know if this is common. Yeah, I don't know if melee players are usually thinking about that, but I think that's kind of
Leffen's
interesting.
100% thinking about that.
Leffen's thinking about that, yeah. I think Leffen needs to feel pretty.
Yes.
What a beautiful man.
Yeah, that's a really that's probably the best example. Firepuff 12. Here's a familiar face. Water impacts my performance the most. Game 3 last stock situations are so much harder without it. I make sure to be hydrated throughout the day and have an ample amount with me during tourney runs. God bless refills at venues.
True.
Yeah, I
They take
mean,
a sip between games for a reason, right?
I think there's probably scientific. Certainly, if you don't have enough water, you can die. So
True.
there's definitely Yeah, I definitely think there's some kind of scientific aspect to this where, yeah, if you're dehydrated, I'm sure your brain performs slower and all kinds of bad stuff is happening to your body that probably makes it very obviously harder to play well. So good to bring that up.
Have you guys heard Brandon's little rant about water that
I
he's been
have.
doing
I
recently?
know. I knew what I was getting into when I said it,
Yeah.
but I said it anyway. There's the idea that, oh well, maybe they're not that thirsty and maybe it's like a mental thing. But I think,
What's this? I haven't heard this.
Brandon and Phil like making fun of everyone that drinks water between sets. Like, no, you're not that thirsty. You're just nervous. And
Yeah, between every game, there's always a sip.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, sure, it's probably a bit ritualistic, but I also think most people are probably dehydrated anyway. There's also been some stuff on that, so I mean,
Yeah, I bet most people need more water than they do than vice versa.
it's probably
Like
still
I bet
helpful.
there's more gamers at tournaments that like could use more water versus are overhydrated and aren't actually thirsty at all. Especially at tournaments because
Yeah.
you're well,
Right.
you're on your feet all day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's funny Khalid posed this question as well because he's a massive water guy. Like he has his like gallon tanker of
Oh,
of water
snap.
that he brings. Yeah. So I just thought it was kind of funny.
Man,
Yeah,
it's good.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea to have water on you. For tournaments. Yeah, I mean you never know. Some tournaments it's hard to get those refills. So our next writer here looks like doesn't have a YouTube account or hasn't changed their username. It's just a bunch of letters and numbers. But well, they said I cannot play if I haven't eaten. I can feel the calories leaving my body, and with them goes my focus and mental. If I ever want to play at my peak or stick to a game plan, I need to bring a banana. And then they gave us a little banana emoji. Is this our first emoji for a community voice response? I feel like we don't get many emojis.
Yeah. Maybe they were on. Maybe they're on mobile when they did this, and that's why the user was like it. I don't know.
Must be. Yeah, maybe they didn't log in. I don't know.
Either way, thank you.
Yeah.
Picture. And yeah, I think a lot of people. I think food is a topic that I think people talk about every so often in the Melee community, and it does seem like it comes back to bananas a lot. That's what I've noticed. So
that's right.
shout outs to bananas. And
there's a lot of DK mains these days, right?
The prophecy was foretold. We could have seen this coming.
Yeah.
And then our last answer here from Lana, always saying, I would definitely say friends cheering for you or your opponent. I don't listen to any music when I play to drown them out. And I have four-stock someone in the Peach Ditto at Genesis, my friends, and their friends cheering, only to go 1-2 after my friends left, thinking I had it in the bag. The crowd buff is real, but it can also be a nerf for your opponent. So I mean, that seems like a hard one to control for, but I could also see that being really fun regardless. I know the UK gets rowdy too, Frenzy.
Yeah.
A bit. Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely even though I'm from the UK, I'm actually a bit of a crowd hater, honestly. I have my whole like anti-noise everything set up all the time. So but yeah, I respect the hell out of people that can play without any sort of like headphones and just sort of sit through and tank it. Like
and you have like game audio routed to your headphones, or how do you do it?
So I actually listen to white noise when I play.
Oh.
Can you hear the game?
So, no. So I don't use game audio.
Wow.
You don't use game audio?
No, I don't use game audio. Reason being is just that I feel like the combination of both like crowd noise and all the external stuff, and then also like not every setup has headphones and all that stuff, right? I'd prefer to just like take the L on that and just always have the exact same setup for myself in terms of my environment.
Wow.
That's me personally though. Like I get really distracted by any sort of like any other noise or like random people walking past and stuff like that. But that's how I do it and it works for me. So yeah.
I mean, you're going deep in the top 100 for a reason. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I mean, I know some people like. I mean, even me, like I swear by game audio, but I do think there's something to be said for. I mean, it seems like it's kind of a hassle to set it up and get it into your headphones. I know Wizrobe's got his setup that he uses.
Yeah, Wizzy and Spark are like the main two that come to mind.
Spark, yeah. I mean, I would say the players that people associate the most with reactions. So
yeah,
maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Maybe there is.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've good responses. I mean, I think they make a lot of sense. We have water, we have food. Let's get into our callers. We've got
Got
some
our voicemail here
we've got our
first.
we got our voicemail here first. We actually had a couple voicemail. I don't think we're going to be addressing all of the call-ins we got, but I mean, if you've got a really burning question and we don't get to you, you can always call in multiple weeks in a row, and we'll definitely be
Or get us live.
Yeah, or get us live. Of course, that's the easiest way. Again, it's exclamation right here. I'll do it in my own chat right now so people can hop in if they want. But yeah, it's I don't know. We've got a phone number. What is it? Voicemail. I'm gonna do exclamation mark voicemail. 213-347-5242. If you want to call in and you can't catch us live. But with that being said, here's our first voicemail question. This is actually the second voicemail question we've done because we had one from Zeke last week, right? No, not Zeke. From some guy whose name started with T, but we couldn't.
Oh yeah, they were in the war zone. They were in the war zone.
They were in the war zone. Yeah, I hope they're okay. Well, this is our second voicemail.
Okay.
That's right. Second voicemail.
We got our second one coming in from Textbook here.
All right.
Hi, this is Textbook calling in from upstate South Carolina. So I found a document online of the Super Smash Bros. Melee official player's guide. And in the guide, every character is listed with 5 attributes: size, weight, power, speed, jump, and usage. Obviously, these attributes are really vague and unhelpful. If you had to sum up every character's strengths and weaknesses with a list of attributes, what attributes would you choose? And also, how would you score some of the characters on those attributes? Are there any notable characters who are very strong in one attribute but weak in the others? Looking forward to what y'all think. All right, bye-bye.
I see. So it's like, can we come up with a better? Yeah, usage just sounds like something you could use, or like maybe how hard they are to use, or something.
Might be.
I know a lot of modern fighting games even will have like how hard is this character to use, and it's always inaccurate. It's like always inaccurate. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're trying.
They're trying,
which is good.
So I guess it's like, can we come up with a better list of attributes than these?
Yeah, we're coming up with our own five attributes.
It could be 5. It could be, I guess, some other number.
Yeah, but
okay,
5. I guess it was actually it was 6.
Well,
huh?
Okay, well, I've definitely got one in mind, which is I think recovery. I think that's a pretty easy one.
Oh, that's a good one. That's an easy one. That's nice. Yeah, that'd be really good for like characters like Peach, Puff,
Mewtwo, Pikachu.
Yeah.
Be low for like Falcon or something. Yeah, recovery is a really good one. Yeah, it depends how broad you want to go, right? Because you could do like defense in general, but I think defense kind of means a lot of different things.
Defense, and I think speed
I like
is another difficult one.
Speed is like, because what does speed mean, right? Because like Falcon, really fast character in terms of movement, but slow when it comes to frame data. So,
so it's like maybe like running speed and then like falling speed and jumping speed. Yeah, I don't.
It's a hard one.
Speed is like a hard one. So I'm afraid of doing that one. But of course there are some other. I think there's another one that's probably pretty easy, like range.
Right? I was thinking range. Yeah. I was thinking range and for a happy medium between speed and whatever, I was thinking just mobility.
Yeah, that's what for me.
And what would mobility include exactly?
Mobility would just be, I mean, you'd be categorized on different things, but it's basically like how much of your game plan is like, okay, I mean, it'd be lower for a character like Peach.
Like Bowser's low mobile.
Bowser's
right?
the lowest.
the
lowest.
Yeah.
We love Bowser here though.
Also,
but then
like
Falcon. Yeah.
Like I think another really good one is just like, and you could split this up. I mean, you could split a bunch of these up, but I was thinking like just combo game or punish, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, it's just better for some characters than others. But if you wanted to split it up, I was thinking, you could do something like grab game, and then just like,
I don't know. I guess
I don't know what I would call it.
If they're supposed to, because we could like keep shrinking it, right? But I almost think the idea of like, the idea of like recovery, range, like punish, like if we keep the number a little smaller, I think even though we lose a lot of nuance, I think it's also kind of fun to try and figure out where we still put some characters.
Yeah.
Because if we're thinking of categories, I think Peach has float cancel. Is that really the same type of zoning or attacking? Like it's technically quick. Like does that include speed or mobility? Like it's like a weird question, right? So I almost think
Yeah.
like just keeping the mobility.
You know what I would actually do? You know what I think I'd actually do? I would do, and I would leave it a little bit vague on purpose. But I think I would do combo and I would do power. And I would use power as like basically. So I would say that a character like Pikachu is like low power. Like I'm thinking like on average your hits don't hit as hard. So like Ganon would be really low on combos, but like he'd be pretty high on power.
Okay.
And I feel like it's like characters where it's kind of scary to get hit. So like Peach would be like obviously really high on power, I think. I feel like I'm kind of conceptualizing this as like in general, like how
strong
combo
an individual hit can do, or at least like a couple hits can do.
Yeah, and also
versus,
how
like, how much you
easy
can chain hits.
exactly how much you can chain hits, and I think for power it would also kind of be like how easy is it to get a kill with this character? Because I think certain characters, they can keep their like that's what I was thinking, like Pikachu. Some characters can keep their combos going pretty long. They can get some nice combos, but like maybe you need a specific hit to get a kill or something like that. Whereas with some
Pikachu can
characters,
hit you
like
4 times and it's 10%. I mean, that's tragic.
right,
Yeah.
and then with other characters, it's like you're not really struggling to find your kill.
Yeah.
Just your moves are just pretty strong in general. So maybe I would do something like that. I don't know.
That's interesting. And then that kind of also encompasses like the idea of edge guarding a little bit too, which I think makes that simpler. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one I was going to add as well was I don't know how you'd phrase this, but something to do with like tech skill, technical ability, like that sort of
Oh
thing.
yeah. That's a good.
Obviously
that's a great
like
point.
Spaceys, Peach, Samus, they're gonna have a lot more stuff they can do than like,
Yeah.
again, like fucking Bowser or whatever.
We do love that.
Yeah.
Other than the Super Duper Koopa, whatever it's called.
Oh, yeah, the backdash guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe
yeah.
I mean maybe this is what they were intending with that usage attribute. Like that, kind of that's kind of what you get. I don't know, like I know like for example in Street Fighter, they've got JP as like hard to use. And like usually when you see hard to use, like the kind of unwritten implication is like, oh well, they've got some stuff. Like once you learn how to, like, it's gonna be, you're not gonna be able to do it immediately, but when you learn their setups, they're gonna have like some kind of tricky technical kind of things that you can do with this character. So maybe that's what they're going with usage. Like difficulty of use also kind of implies like richness of how difficult this character is to master.
Yeah, so I like all of this. So I think this is a pretty good list. The only thing I'm curious about, so I'm looking at recovery, range, combos, power, tech skill, and mobility. I think the only thing that I'm not too sure how we classify on this is a projectile. Does that go under range? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a hard one. Something that did just come to mind actually when we said recovery, maybe that should be survivability instead.
Could be.
Survivability.
That
frailty or
opens
something.
up a whole, although that might open up a whole another can of worms. I don't know.
Right. Does Puff die early or not? It's like
right.
It's hard to quantify for some people.
So I mean, in survivability, I guess we would try to balance those two, right? Recovery with floatiness.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
I think
like
that's
Falcon lives super long, right? But then like his recovery is worse than like
so
a
he
lot
just
of the
gets,
characters.
if you get hit off stage at 70, but you die at 200, did you really die at 200?
Yeah.
Well, you take the average, I suppose. You kind of
right.
consider all the attributes.
Right.
Yeah, it depends how many you want to do. If you wanted to do 10 attributes, then you could do both, like, weight and recovery or something like that. Depends how abstract or specific you wanted to be. But it's interesting to talk about, yeah. It'd be kind of fun for, if there's any, I don't know, I can imagine if someone was graphically inclined out there, you could make a,
modern
pretty
players
cool
guide.
visual. Yeah, modern players guide with all the characters and their stats. I mean, it is funny because different people value different things, like in terms of even the attributes that we've kind of talked about. It's like, it's like who's higher on the combo game? Is it like Falco, or is like obviously Falco's got incredible combos, but then like his throw combos are kind of lacking. Like
Right. Good point.
Whereas like all the other top tiers, I mean, Sheik, Marth, Fox, like these characters are all looping their throw into itself. Falco's not really doing that. So is that something, you could break that, you could break that into two different attributes if you wanted.
For sure. And I love that you bring that up. I was actually curious what what Frenzy might think if we gave him all of these attributes, how he would score Falco on all of them.
Ooh, okay.
Little application of the
Mhm.
concepts here. That was the other part of the question. So again, one at a time. I mean, I can list them off to you one at a time. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah, sure.
survivability, range, combos, power, tech skill, and mobility. And if you want me to give them to you one at
Okay.
a time, I can do that. So for
Yeah,
first,
well, let's say
survivability.
like out of 10 or something like that. I think 10's probably.
I think the player's guide was
I'm right
5,
with
but
it,
you know
5.
what? We can go crazy. We can go to 10.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. I just thought it's a bit more like you can be a bit more specific, I guess.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you thinking for survivability?
Survivability. So I think it's pretty low. I mean, like you said, it's sort of like a combination of recovery and just like character physics, right? So like their weight and full speed and stuff.
And also,
So
how well do they handle taking a hit, right?
yeah. So I'd probably say it's like hmm, maybe like a 6 or something like that.
Okay.
Like because so there's a lot of moves that he survives quite well if it's like a hit off the top, for example.
Mm.
His recovery can be pretty tricky. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. But he does still die, quite
He
early
does spawn
sometimes.
KO percent, as some have said.
Yeah, and obviously there's like the gimping factor, right? So that's why I put it at like a 6, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing to figure out because sometimes, you can see Mango making it back tons of times against Zayn, and sometimes he gets down throw down tilted, and well,
Mhm.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but
it
yeah,
is.
I'd go with a 6 for that one.
6. All
6
right.
out of
So
10.
what are we thinking about range? And maybe we include the
Range.
laser in here. I don't know. Maybe that's where the big
Yeah,
star goes.
I'd say he's pretty high on the range factor, honestly. Like, a lot of his hitboxes
Mhm.
are amazing. Even excluding laser, down air, up tilt, and back air both cover like nearly a whole sort of like 360 degree. There's that tiny bit in front of him that's kind of annoying sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd say he's probably like 8 out of 10 or something. Like, I'd say the only characters he really gets outranged by is like Moth and maybe like Sheik with her back turned, like Falcons sometimes. There's a few exceptions, but overall, I'd say that he usually has the range advantage versus a lot
Yeah,
of
he's got a
characters.
good range. For
So
sure.
I'd say about 8 out of 10.
It's comfortable. That's sensible. Now, all right, combos. What Toph said before about our
Mhm.
grab, but versus our
Yeah.
our punishability. What are we thinking about that?
I mean, he's got to be one of the highest ones, I think, right? Probably like
Yeah.
a 8 or 9. Like,
Mhm.
literally, I think the only issue is his grab. He has one. He,
Mhm.
he probably has
Mhm.
one of the biggest combo games on like um floaties. Like that's actually one of the reasons I picked Falco in the first place was that you play against Peach, Puff, Samus, whatever, and you can still do loads of big combos versus them.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of characters have
Mhm.
to just take 2 or 3 hits and then leave it. But yeah, I feel like Falco, other than the grab, and even then he has some stuff sometimes. So I'd say he's probably like a 9 out of 10 on that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Very well said. Well said. Then power. What are we thinking? How
Uh,
strong is the bird?
well, I mean, part of that power discussion was killing, right?
Mhm.
And he's definitely got the bird flu or whatever you want to call it, where he can't kill.
Yeah.
So, but then I'd say I'd actually say something like down air would probably fit in that power category because it kills off the bottom
Mhm.
really early,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
breaks DC, so I'd say that's quite a powerful move, and also back air sometimes can be. Olive's like forward smash and down smash are decent, but they're not the best in category. So probably like a 7, I'd say. 7 on the
Respectable.
power.
Respectable. He's got a little more power than he does survivability. Love that for
Yeah.
him. And then tech skill.
I mean, he's got to be a
What are we
10, right,
thinking?
for that.
Yeah, he's high.
I think, yeah. Him and Fox probably like tied, right, for most technical
Very,
Mhm.
characters,
very techy
probably.
characters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a gimme. And so,
Yep.
last one, mobility. So
I
this is an
feel.
interesting one, I think, for Falco because look at it. For
Yeah.
those of you that are audio listeners, Frenzy kind of rolled his eyes a little bit there. He's like,
Yeah.
"Ah,
I can
here we go, the
imagine.
old dash speed." But I mean, he's got
Yeah.
he's got amazing full hop and he's got amazing fall speed, which of course can work against him when he's off the stage, but it can be really helpful
Maybe
for him on the
yeah,
stage, right?
maybe Nintendo's onto something with having jump and whatever
Jump
that was,
or-
jump and speed or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe jump should be its own thing. I don't know.
Okay, I'll give him. Mm, it's either a 7 or an 8 in my mind. Like obviously, like you said, the biggest thing is the dash.
The dash
Dash
is
speed.
such a pain.
But he has a very good dash jump specifically.
Mhm.
Right, his jump laser and jump aerial goes a lot further than a lot of other characters. He has best vertical in class, right? Highest full jump, highest fast fall speed. And his like dash wave dash does actually go pretty far. You know, especially when you watch like Mango wave dashing around the screen and stuff, or
Mhm.
you know, some of the more technical players like when you watch Magi playing Falco, I don't think Falco looks like a slow character, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it literally is just the dash in terms of mobility. So I think I'll put it at an 8.
Okay,
Which is a
interesting.
bit that's the most like sort of iffy one in my mind.
Yeah, because you know
Is
you are
mobility.
dashing a lot, right? So it's a weird. It's a
Yeah,
weird.
but you're
thing
also
to-
jumping a lot.
Also
You
jumping a
know?
lot.
So
Really depends
Yeah.
on what you're trying to do more, how painful it feels.
mhm, yeah.
But yeah, so
I think that's a good list.
yeah, so if people are curious, you know, we can put those in the comments. You can have it out. You can rate the other characters. I read the comments. I'll check them out if nothing else, whether it's a
Oh,
community
yeah.
voice or question or not. I'm curious about it, but let's make sure we can get some of our live callers. And this was a fun discussion. And
Mhm.
thank you
Yeah.
for listening to your answers,
Yeah,
Frenzy.
thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. It was a really good one.
Thank you, Textbook. All right, let's go ahead and get our first live caller in. It is Tiles, who I believe is also from the EU. Tiles, what's up? Where are you calling in from? And what's your question for us today, gamer?
What's up? What's up? First of all, can you guys hear me fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, because there was an issue earlier. I'm calling in from Portugal. Yeah.
Very nice.
Portugal.
Very nice.
Awesome.
nice. It's late for
Yeah.
you as well.
Yeah, it's like midnight, so late-ish.
Mhm.
But yeah, basically, my question is, with EU top players claiming they have no experience in some matchups, like Driftwood Falcon, is it worth for top players to play those on a lower echelon to your Leffens, your Pips, your Profs, or is the gap just too big? Some would say laughable.
Mm.
Basically, should Triff keep getting ghosted by Isdar, or should he just play Steph Money like one time, please?
Yeah, this is pretty topical because I think that Triff tweet was today or yesterday or something like that, just after the tournament. I'm guessing this is mainly directed at me.
Yeah,
but...
please take it away.
yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think a lot of people have different opinions on this. I personally feel like as long as somebody isn't, like just picking up the game or something like that, I think there's always something you can learn from playing people of a lower level. I actually have a system where people can schedule sessions with me as long as you're above a certain ranking. So I think I usually say around like platinum or something like that.
Mhm.
I'm down to play you for an hour and we'll just play. And like before Fate and Gommel that I went to, I got practice in pretty much every matchup just from that. And like, yeah, it's not the best Samus in the world that I get to play against, but it's something, right? And I always feel like something's better than nothing.
Oh yeah.
There's only so far you can get with theory, and yeah, I think that just long term also, there's a lot of matchups that like we didn't have for a long time in Europe. There was a period where it was all Fox, Sheik, and Peach. There was no Falcos, there was no Moths, etc. And if you invest into your player base, I feel like you'll get to the point where you've got those Moths to practice with, you've got those, whatever character, right? So I think just like short term, it's good to still get that experience and remind yourself. And long term, it's just better for for the scene to invest in your player base, right, and give people that experience. Yeah, I'd say the sentiment that I sometimes get from like Leffen and Triff, and I mean I don't want to put words in their mouth, but sometimes it can set you off on the wrong foot, right? Like you play against someone and you expect something to work, and then you're playing in one of Sammy's versus a really good player of a character, and suddenly they throw something new at you, or something doesn't work how you thought it would. So I think there's two sides to the coin, but I always lean towards if I can get the experience, I'm going to get it. And if there's anything I feel is a bit, sus whilst I'm playing or whatever, like I'll just go in the lab and test it, right? Like
Right.
I don't think it's worth neglecting, a huge source of practice for yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's how you got to where you were, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you had to keep after, right? I mean, even because I know Europe was even less developed 10 years ago. So you guys have
Definitely.
and in the UK too. So you guys have done a lot of good stuff and makes sense. And I think one real quick thing is you can play your well, maybe not your Leffens. I don't know how much he plays people. I see Triff tweets, but your Pips and your Profs and whoever, and they can go secondaries and help practice too, right? And so maybe they don't play the character as much, or maybe they do, or maybe you could learn it some, and then you're both benefiting, right? They learn how to play as the character, which helps them. You get to experience against the character, and you get to play against someone that's piloting it that has high level experience. So that can be good too, right? I don't know if that's something you guys do or not.
Yeah, no, it's something I've been experimenting with more, and I know, a lot of the European players have started to pick up lots of different characters.
Cool.
Pip's playing Falcon
Mm.
for a lot of matchups now, and he also plays quite a lot of other characters. Priston was the same when he was playing. Kingy plays a lot of different characters. I think you got to make do with what you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the luxury of having all of a lot of players to connect to all the time. And so I just feel like it would be silly to not use a resource available to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is there anything you wanted to add, Toph?
Do you ever feel like I have this kind of weird impression that sometimes it also kind of matters on what character they play? And like what I mean by that is I've definitely played people where I felt like it was like really good practice because so like for example, like I think Spaceys are an easy one. Mewtwo King famously would play any Fox or Falco at any skill level because it's like it's always going to be good combo practice.
Yeah.
I had this like impression where, for example, I think Yoshi is not good for this. Where I played a Yoshi player for like an hour and then I played Amsa, and I was like, oh man, like playing that other Yoshi player got me into this habit of going for these aerials that now that I'm playing Amsa, he keeps armoring them and then punishing me.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was alluding to. I think when I said about like something you feel like works and then doesn't. I think Yoshi
Right.
is the best example of that.
Mhm.
I sort of feel like my approach to that, at least, is that as I'm playing, I'm sort of making a mental note of whether I'm doing is actually good or
Mm,
whether it just works on the player that I'm playing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
yeah, that's fair.
And it's still, I feel like it's just still good to jog your memory, right?
Yeah.
Like if you haven't played against a Samus in
True.
6 months, and then you just play even a bad Samus, like it just it sort of like makes you remember things, and you just remind yourself of the matchup. I feel
Yep.
like.
It's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
certainly.
sure.
Certainly.
Yeah. Well, hey.
Great question, Talos.
Yeah,
Great
awesome.
question, Tiles, and good discussion. Thank you so much, Tiles. Any shout outs for us on your way out today?
Yeah, sure. I want to shout out the Portuguese melee scene. We're still going. If it's strong or not, we don't know, but we're going.
Love
And
that. Love that.
You've got some players. Don't
yeah,
cut
we have like a really good Falco, I've heard.
Raiden.
And yeah, and shout out to the Scottish melee scene, which is probably
let's go.
the coolest scene in the UK. But yeah, that's it. And thank you guys for your time and for always. Somehow I always keep finding myself in the call. So
Good to have you every time.
GG. Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Appreciate it.
See you
See
guys.
you, gamer.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna take our last caller here, and it is Zondi. Hello, Zondi. Welcome to the program. Where are you calling in from? What's your question for us today, gamer?
Hi, I'm calling in from Manchester, in the UK.
Very nice, very nice.
And my question is, recently in the UK, there's been some discussion around a UK playstyle, whether it exists, and if so, what it is. And nowadays, less so than in old school Melee between East Coast and West Coast playstyles, and nowadays, especially with online, regional playstyle distinctions are less prevalent. But can you think of any other regions whose distinct styles can be described in like these general brushstroke terms?
I guess I should provide some context for.
That would help. That would help.
But
But
that's,
I mean, as soon as Gandhi joined at Frenzy, for the audio listeners, he was making all kinds of faces. So I think he expected something. I'm not sure what, but yeah, I'd love some context.
Yeah. So I've been harassed with this idea of the UK playstyle nonstop by a certain player that I won't give credit to. Yeah, so it's basically just this idea that like everybody in the UK has this sort of set rhythm to how they play, and that the only people that ever really break that were Prof and to some extent me. And it's sort of this vibe that like whenever they play like either other European countries or like when people go to NA, they're just completely thrown off by like the timings at which people play at. And I think like to sort of give a general overview of it, it's just that the UK is very, very like we want to be interacting at all times with the opponent. It doesn't matter if it's like a good fight, a bad fight, whatever. There's no sort of like taking a multi-step approach to like outplaying the opponent. And I mean, I think that's why part of why Prof did so well for so many years is that he was playing on that level of like, I'm going to do this like crazy movement sequence and then make you feel uncomfortable and then space just outside of your range and, you know, get you to do something, right? And then he's going to hit you. A good phrase for it somebody came up with last weekend was he's a carrot dangler. He dangles the carrot in front of you and you feel like you can get it and you never can, right? And he's the only one that sort of played that style. And I feel like when I travel to other places, especially NA, there's a lot more layers to the gameplay. And like there's a lot more variety in like styles and timings and all of that stuff. Whereas yeah, the UK play style is basically just we want to interact as much as possible, and we're just gonna like throw ourselves at each other and see what happens.
Oh, so if you didn't see the player cams or the names or anything, do you think you could pick out UK players just from watching?
I think I'd have a pretty good success rate. Yeah, I do think there's still, you know, again, like obviously, NA has a bigger player base, so there's going to be more representation of different styles, right? So like there is also really hyper aggressive, interactive sort of like players in NA, but then there's also people willing to time out in pools, right? And I've literally never seen that in the UK or even in Europe, I don't think. And then, like, I think one of the first events I went to in the US, I saw that happen, and I was like, "That is just a completely different like vibe." I don't know.
I'd imagine so. I imagine you probably
yeah.
said it a little differently in the UK group chat too. We appreciate your sincerity here.
But yeah, so that's what my understanding at least of the UK playstyle is, and so yeah, I think the easiest example was like the East Coast West Coast sort of style we used to sort of talk about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you guys probably have more idea of your respective scenes, you know, if there's anything like that that's happened.
Yeah, and Toph, I'm thinking about Amsa bringing up how he almost said the coast seemed opposite to him to how it seemed so classically a while ago. If you remember, he said that on one of the episodes. But there was something I wanted to bring up before that, even that I kind of think about, especially watching Canadian players, and I think this was true in the Brawl days, and I think it may carry through now. And I'm curious about what you think about it. I first got turned onto this idea by Drug Fox, where he said, you know, back in the day, Canadians are able to hit like a truck, but they don't really have like so much of a defensive plan. So they were very very offensively oriented. And then I think about um, Moki now or even None and I think Soonsei has that kind of quality too. And so it seems like that trend, at least among the higher level players from Canada, follow that. I'm not sure how deep that goes, but I was thinking that's kind of an interesting thing, and I was wondering if you felt that way or you had any other regional differences you noticed.
No, I think that's pretty pertinent. I feel like these days it might not be the entire region, but it's pretty typically like pockets of people. You know,
Yeah.
like I mean, NorCal had this thing where there are like a couple of people in NorCal that I think, for example, for a while, I think Spark and Ralph had a really, they were two people that I felt like they kind of fit in a way what Frenzy was just saying about the UK, where they kind of had this kind of rhythm to them. I remember Spark and Ralph were two players where I was like, very early on, I was like, oh, anytime that they can possibly shield drop, they're going to shield drop. And I used to use that as intel when I'd play them in tournament. And then, you'd have people like, I think, for example, I think Shroomed and Pew Pew, especially their Marths, had a lot of similarities. In particular, in certain matchups, they would play. They took a lot of things from each other, even though I think they're pretty distinguishable from each other. So there were these kind of like isolated kind of pockets of people that would play kind of similarly. But yeah, it's harder to kind of cast a blanket over an entire region these days the way that it sort of used to be. But yeah, I mean, sometimes there's kind of a trickle down factor from the top. If there's like one really particularly strong player in a particular region, sometimes then everyone kind of models themselves after that player in some ways.
That's what I was going to mention. Honestly, was like I think about Mango and SoCal, right? Like I'd say a lot of players in at least from what I've seen, sort of try to, like you said, model it after his play style, and I think the reason it's sort of like maybe not as prevalent now is just because of online, right? Like Slippy, people traveling more. Whereas before, if it's like you're always playing in the same group, you're always sort of like exposed to the same ideas, right? Whereas the more people you play and the more styles you see, you're going to change your gameplay more, right?
Yeah. I feel like Arizona's still weird though.
Yeah, I mean that's a good one as well. There was also I think Triff made a tweet a little bit ago about like there's a picture of Dreamland, and then there's like Latin America, Europe, and it's like all the different positions that people would play in.
Oh, interesting.
And it was like Europe was like, I think it was like Europe was like the top platform or something like that. Latin America was like by the ledge, or there's some like crazy like but yeah, I think that was a pretty funny example of that.
That's a good tweet, yeah.
But
I don't know if I have anything further about the regions themselves, because again, it is just such broad strokes, and people are pulling from each other, right? Because if they're playing in these online tournaments, even right, like regions across the country or farther can be playing each other. So I think I think it really is becoming more homogenized in a lot of ways, and that's without taking into consideration things like coaching or those VODs being available, or however that may influence people too. So I think there is a lot of similarities happening, but I think it's cool kind of in the middle of all that we have some thoughts about, for example, Canada and even the UK. So I think that's kind of neat. So I like that this got brought up, and I think this was a fun discussion, fun question. Thank you, Zondi, so much for it. And got any shout outs for us on your way out today?
Yeah, shout out to UK Melee.
yeah.
Obviously. Shout outs the smaller scenes around the UK, especially the O2ers. Shout out to the O2ers, the lifeblood of the scene, and the TOs that keep the scene running.
For sure.
Yeah. JSOT, Liquid Jeans.
Yep.
Etc.
Those guys.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, and hope you have a good rest of your night, gamer.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Well, hey, that's our last caller, so there's really only one thing left we have to ask for you besides for thumbnails after this stream, Frenzy, and that is the community voice question.
That's right.
Only you can ask to the YouTube audience that you were surely thinking about this whole time and didn't forget about. So what do you have a question, or do we need to stall for you? What's the situation, gamer?
No, I've got a backup in case nothing got sort of inspired. So I think my question is going to be, what is, and this is inspired by you, PP, what's your favorite PP Falco set of all time?
God. Oh God, he's doing it to me.
Great question.
This is a good question. I'm really, you know what, Frenzy, this might be one of my favorite community voices. I don't say this often, but you know what? This is just golly. I just feel so inspired by this.
Well, do you have a favorite, PP? Both of you. Both of you.
My favorite would be versus Armada at Smashers Reunion, the first set, not the second. First.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that sprang to mind, and then also the Pound 5 set. The Smashers Reunion one's really funny to me because literally one of the first interactions that happens is you do a rising down air into Armada, and he crouch cancels it because it hits with the PAL hitbox.
Oh, the PAL hitbox!
Yeah,
yay!
And there was a Ginger Squid sort of like analysis once, and it just blew their mind. They were like, the greatest Falco minds of a generation like couldn't figure out how did he crouch cancel that? There's no way.
Man. Armada was truly built diff, huh?
Yeah, he was. I'd say that Pound 5 Armada set's probably the best one for me. The forward smash at the end. Always remember that.
Very memorable. Yeah, that's a good answer. I was thinking Skatar Mewtwo King.
Oh,
yeah,
another famous one. But that's a great question.
Poor old
Think of the real
he went through it. I feel like Mewtwo King may show up more than once in people's answers, and I'm sure that is something he would appreciate. So shout outs to him in advance.
I'm sure he'd have a lot to say about all of those.
More than
and its controller.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Good
but
question.
yeah, this is a fun one. I'm really looking forward to these answers for no particular reason. Fun talk today. Really glad we were able to have you on, Frenzy. It's very late over there, so we are gonna go ahead and get going. But thank you again. Thank you, Toph, as always, for holding down super well, as you always do. And thank you, everyone out there, for watching, listening, calling in, everything else. We'll be back next week. But for now, this is Radio Melee, signing out.